Despite those poll numbers, a look inside Larry Sabato's crystal ball shows Hillary Clinton maintaining a clear path to the nomination. Associate editor Jeffrey Skelly writes, quote, "What it really comes down to is this. There is no Barack Obama in this cycle's Democratic field. Neither Joe Biden nor Bernie Sanders are likely to fill that role. And Clinton's solid support among non-white voters may endure even if Biden throws his hat in the ring, positioning her to remain the favorite in the long run." Joining us now is Larry Sabato, the man with the crystal ball, the director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia. So, Larry, despite all of these articles about Hillary's fading poll numbers and perhaps fading favorability ratings, you say she is still positioned to be the Democratic nominee.
Yes, I believe she's a substantial favorite, even if Joe Biden jumps in, and I'm not convinced he's going to do it, but we'll see. But even if he does, here's the advantage that Clinton has. As we've learned over the years, polls do not translate into delegates very precisely. You have to look at the order of the primaries. Well, the first two, Iowa caucus and New Hampshire primary, are heavily white. And Clinton does less well with whites than she does with minorities. There's where Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden could do well. But then you move into a long series of primaries and caucuses where non-whites either dominate or have a very large percentage of the Democratic turnout. Hillary Clinton is only at 45 to 50% overall, but she is 65% support with minorities. Now, John, let me add one proviso. What could change that? You heard the spokesperson for President Obama the other day say that President Obama will not rule out endorsing a candidate in the Democratic primaries. Suppose he endorses his vice president, Joe Biden. He could turn some of those non-white voters into Biden supporters, having them leave Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, well, 8 years ago, Hillary Clinton was the sure thing candidate. She was the one who was going to get the nomination. And then all of a sudden in the Iowa caucuses, this little known freshman senator from Illinois rode in and stole her thunder. So what happens if in this race, for instance, Bernie Sanders is leading her in the polls in New Hampshire? If she goes down to defeat in a state, and in an early state like that, could we see the same effect as happened 8 years ago?
We'll see some momentum for Sanders or Biden or whoever beats her in either Iowa or New Hampshire. Here's the difference, John. She's learned from that defeat. The Clinton campaign generally has learned. They had expected just to roll to the nomination, to win the first contest easily. They'd done very little organizing, very little preparation for the succeeding contests. Well, they haven't made that mistake this time. They have done far more organizing, far more preparation in all of the primaries and caucuses after the first two, Iowa and New Hampshire. So she's much better prepared. Now, that doesn't mean she can't blow it, but she's much better prepared than she was in 2008.
This is something that might be a little unfair to ask of you because it's not something you can really poll, but her favorability, popularity ratings have really taken a hit. Especially with regard to the email issues. The FBI is still investigating. What if there were some kind of an indictment or some kind of a criminal action brought forward?
Then all bets are off. That would change everything if she were indicted, absolutely. Then you would have a reordering of the Democratic primary, and if Joe Biden hadn't jumped in, he probably would. Even if it's very late, you can still have delegate transfers right up to the convention. So that is something that I think Hillary Clinton and her campaign need to be concerned about, though they say they're not.
You said that her support among non-white voters is what really solidifies her path to the Democratic nomination. How does Joe Biden do there if he gets into the race?
John, he does surprisingly poorly. It's really remarkable because he's been the vice president for 2 terms, President Obama, who has very strong support with minorities, but he really doesn't score well at all. The only person who scores more poorly with minorities than Joe Biden is Bernie Sanders. Remember, he represents a heavily white state, Vermont, and he hasn't quite worked out how one appeals to minority voters. He's trying, and he's got a few months to work on it.
We'll see what happens. Get the crystal ball ready. Larry Sabato, thank you.